The Minnesota Vikings look very different this year. Can they overcome the overhaul and try to right themselves into the postseason this year? Let's see which way the ship takes them as we go into this Minnesota Vikings 2024 season outlook. What's up, guys? Chase Younts here. We're back at it again with another video. Before we get into this, please like, subscribe, comment on the video. Appreciate all the support that has been going on. Today, we're going to be talking about the Minnesota Vikings, a team in 2023 that finished in third place in the NFC North. They were 7-10, started 4 different quarterbacks by the looks of Kirk Cousins, Jaren Hall, Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins. It was a circus, to say the least. The fact that they still won 7 games, it was an all over the map season for them, starting 0-3. Then at one point they were 6-4. Josh Dobbs walked in 5 days and of shuffle and chaos and beat the Falcons. Just a lot of crazy stuff happened, and then they finished 7-10. But it was a chaotic season, to say the least, for the Minnesota Vikings, and it stayed that way in the offseason. Normally, when someone asks if they want good news or bad news, when there's both involved, they ask for the bad news first. And in the National Football League, obviously addition and subtraction happen. So the subtraction for the Vikings, Kirk Cousins goes to Atlanta, Danielle Hunter goes down to Houston, Jordan Hicks goes to Cleveland, Marcus Davenport to Detroit, and then KJ Osborne goes to the New England Patriots. There was a lot of movement going around with them. But on the addition side, on the bright side, Aaron Jones from the division rival Packers comes over to Minnesota, as well as Jonathan Greenard from Houston and Andrew Van Ginkel from Miami. So 2 good pass rushers in that regard. Blake Cashman from Houston as well makes his way up to pair of Ivan Pace Jr. and then quarterback Sam Darnold. And they also drafted J.J. McCarthy. So this quarterback room looks a lot different from last year, and it's going to be a very unique Vikings team to take a look at as we break down the offense and defensive sides of the ball. Offensively for the Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, the head coach and play caller, he's got a lot on his plate this year. You got 2 new quarterbacks in Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy. Sam Darnold is figured to be the starter, at least for week 1, but there's no official reports on that. We're going to see how J.J. McCarthy goes throughout training camp in the preseason and see if he can pick up this offense. But whoever the quarterback is, they're going to have a very talented fleet of options to throw the football to and dispose of it. Aaron Jones at running back, Justin Jefferson, arguably, and I believe, the best receiver in the National Football League. Jordan Addison came on really strong last year as a 2. Brandon Powell stepped up as a 3. TJ Hawkinson, when on the field, is a very good tight end. So this cast, whoever the quarterback is going to have an easier job of disposing the football. The offensive line, on the other hand, it wasn't horrible last year. There were spots where it didn't go well. They've got a lot of room for improvement, to say the least, but it wasn't the worst in the National Football League. But the overall take on this is, with a guy like Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy stepping in there, I think the Vikings should try to really get more reps at running the football. They honestly were somewhat efficient at running the football. They averaged around 4 yards a carry as a team, but they just never ran it that much. They were running it less than 20 times a game, so you're never really able to get any sort of volume or any sort of rhythm. They just decided to throw the football all the time, and that's not a bad thing in some sense, but if you're trusting Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy to throw 40 or 50 times a game, that's not many games you're going to win, even with this group of guys that he's throwing to. But overall, I think the big question is, how much can Kevin O'Connell do as a play caller? And I think the big answer to that is just being able to say, hey, we're going to run the football. We're going to try to be efficient. And then we're going to set up the play action pass, get Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, those guys running over the middle and try to stack this box. And then you got some of the fastest and most electric playmakers in football running open. So I think it's going to be a very unique way of how Kevin O'Connell and how the Vikings offensive coaching staff can try to scheme up their players. On the defensive side of the football, Brian Flores. You already know he loves to cause havoc on quarterbacks, and the Vikings were certainly able to do that last year. Unfortunately for them, Danielle Hunter left in free agency to go to Houston, but they added Jonathan Greenard and Andrew Van Ginkel. That's a big bonus for them. Blake Cashman at linebacker was able to step in there and be paired with Ivan Pace Jr., which is a force to be reckoned with in the National Football League. Those two being able to stop the run will be huge, and it'll revert to everybody else trying to rush the passer. with Minnesota, just adding those frontline rushers is going to also help that secondary out as well. It's a all right secondary led by veteran Harrison Smith. They're going to be playing off the energy from all of the blitzing that the Vikings do. They'll send 7 guys. They'll send 8 guys. They send the kitchen sink, the house, whatever metaphor you want to put out there. And being able to have those guys on the back end make quick, instinctive, reactive thoughts and plays is just going to be big. And, with how the Vikings played football last year, it was very boom or bust. Some of the times things would go well, they're able to jump around, intercept it, but other times quarterbacks are able to just kind of hang in there for a second and just hit it over the top. If they're able to be more effective and more schematic on their ways of getting to the quarterback, then it's going to make these guys think a little bit more. And then you think for a half second longer, and then you're on the ground and you're trying to wipe out grass that's stuck in your helmet. So the Vikings being able to have more depth at pass rusher is big. And if the secondary and everything else can be married well together and they can stop the run with guys like Cashman and Ivan Pace Jr., the Vikings have a chance to be a pretty good defense this year. So looking at the Vikings scheduled, they play a far from easy schedule the first 10 weeks of the season. They've got some tough matchups, and many of their tougher opponents on the bright side are going to be played at home in Minneapolis at US Bank Stadium. So, take it with a grain of salt. You're looking at that start of the season, the Giants on the road, then you come home and you take on the Niners and the Texans, who are going to be some tough ones to play against. And the game I want to focus on is at Green Bay, the last week of September, week 4. The first divisional test is going to be Sam Darnold. Is going to be J.J. McCarthy. It'd be interesting to see how either of those quarterbacks go in there and play at Lambeau Field. At least it'll be nicer out for the Minnesota Vikings. They don't have to worry about playing in the elements. So that's a huge thing that they could try to take advantage of right there. You look at this, the back half of the scheduled, if they can just try to stay afloat around 500 during that Thanksgiving time and take advantage of some of those matchups down the stretch. They're not going to play any easy teams, but some more favorable opponents. If they're able to just stay afloat and turn on the gears right before December, then the Vikings could be in a pretty good spot if they're able to gel. Looking at the ceiling, the floor, the thoughts and everything else, the ceiling for this Vikings team, I think, is 9-8. This is a big transition for the Vikings. I'm not trusting the quarterbacks that much, and J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold. I just don't know how I feel about any of them. It's going to be dependent on how Kevin O'Connell's able to help out and wrap things around. So I think the most I see is around 9 wins, which is still over 500 and could give them a chance to make the playoffs. The floor, 5-12. If stuff just falls apart, and it all starts at the quarterback position too. If guys are just throwing interceptions and the defense isn't connecting and they're just not being able to, if it turns in from boom and bust and the defense is, cracking under pressure, I mean, this thing could go south. But my sense is around the same record as last year, 7-10, 8-9. I think they're going to be right around that 500 mark. The Vikings do have a lot of really good players on their team that I think will be able to overcome some of the misfortunes and some of the holes they have on this team. But overall, if the quarterbacks are able to develop and not turn the football over and make more better plays than mistakes, then this team could find themselves in the playoffs. It's going to be a very interesting year for Minnesota, and I'm excited to see what the Vikings have.